Hello, thanks for joining us, everyone. I want to welcome you all. I'm so happy to be here today. We're going to give a presentation on setting boundaries, when to set them, how to set them, and strategies for strengthening yourself. I want to remind everybody that everything here is confidential, so your identity is private. We have Elke Scholz. She's going to talk with us about the strategies here today. Elke's a registered psychotherapist. She's the author of Anxiety Warriors Volume 1 and 2. And I want to encourage you to check out some of the information that she has left for you guys on anxietywarrior.ca/gifts. Okay, I'm going to pass it over to Elke. Take care.
Thank you, Nathan, and hi, everybody. We've had sessions on anxiety, highly sensitive character traits, and always strategies in every session. And also power of your mind and mindfulness as well. Remember to give us your feedback, and especially to your feedback to your family well-being coordinator or to me below or on the website. And today, the notes will be in the Anxiety Warrior Volume 2, pages 182, 185 on boundaries and setting boundaries. So if you don't have your copy, again, ask your family well-being coordinator or contact me below. So the notes are quite thorough and probably covering more than what we're talking about today. You have a right to stand up for yourself, and that right is a form of love and self-respect. And what I've noticed is personally and professionally is when our boundaries are crossed, that we may experience stress, conflict inside ourselves, confusion, anger, resentment, feeling tired, exhausted. And usually those are clues that somehow our boundaries are being crossed or we're past a boundary. And that could be a boundary in self-care. It could be a boundary that we need to set with ourselves or somebody else. So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about. And the main thing is, again, which we've been talking about in many of these sessions, is that we need to be self-aware, really understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling that way. And then what can we do about that? So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So it's when to set those boundaries and then how to set those. And it even could be feeling restless or uncertain, somehow like that. Healthy boundaries are important for a healthy life and a happy life. And one of the things that I'm going to say a couple times today is you don't have to be nice to set a boundary. You just need to be clear and you need to be firm. So I'm going to be talking about that and saying that again in a few different ways. So think about that. Remember that is we don't need to be nice, just need to be clear and firm. A lot of times we'll say yes, and you may notice that your energy drops and we think we should, and I'm using that word should, or we think we must say yes to a job or a task. Perhaps it's employer, perhaps it's a parent, perhaps it's a sibling, a colleague, a friend, and we feel that we don't want to disappoint somebody, yet it starts to drain us. And that could be something as simple as doing somebody else's job or adding to your own workload when you really don't have the time. So thinking about that, and again, coming back to what are you feeling in your body? Healthy boundaries means knowing your limits. What are your limits? And I think we mentioned that in our first session about anxiety. What are your limits? We need to know what our limits are and how we're going to express them, how we're going to maintain them. And one of the things is that there isn't a formula or a cookie cutter form of what is a limit. And we need to know our own limits. And Nathan, your limits will be different than my limits. And our limits are different in every situation. So it's really, again, it's back to knowing who you are, knowing what you're feeling, and knowing what you're going through. So know what your limits are, know what's comfortable for you. One of the things that we talked about was trusting your own body. And I think you remember the scale, 0 to 10. So 0 being calm. And usually we're a 0, perhaps on a really nice holiday, or perhaps sitting in the sun in a lawn chair, somehow relaxing, chilling. 0. So that's that no stress. It's not very common. I'm not at a 0, even though I'm having a good time. And, you know, when we're excited or having fun or working, we're usually about a 1 or a 2. And that's actually a good thing. So understanding that scale and knowing what that scale is for you. And the 10, of course, when we talked about it, is not being able to put a thought together, not being able to think. So that's the 10. And we usually use terms like I'm outside of myself, or I'm not thinking, or I'm panicking, or my mind is blank. And that would be a 10. So just kind of understand where you are, 0 to 10, especially around boundary setting. And the one exercise we did talk a little bit about, and I want to go over it again, is the yes, no, maybe exercise, because that's a real strong one for boundary setting. So as you can see, well, I'm going to try and actually, no, I got to scooch this way. If my hands are apart, so if this hand is the yes and this hand is the no, we usually know what our extremes are. So right now in this moment, I want you to take a few moments, maybe not so much minutes, but I want you to think of a yes moment in your life. Something that where you felt on top of the world, you felt fantastic. Maybe there was that effervescence of joy in your system. And so recall that memory. Take a few moments thinking about the memory, where you were, the sights and sounds, maybe smells, maybe the people in your life and that time. So as you're breathing, notice how your body feels in the yes moment. So just noticing that. Just take a moment, notice how you feel. And you don't have to describe it. A lot of times, these body feelings, these body sensations are difficult to describe because they're sensations. So just noticing that and being aware of that. And just so you know, in this exercise, we're going to end with the yes because we're going to go to the no as well. So I want you to shake that off. And then I want you to go to that no space. So a time of oppression, perhaps a time of sadness, perhaps anger, injustice. Just think about how back to that memory, take a few moments. We're only going to spend a few moments there. And again, notice your body, and your body will have changed. So just take some breaths, take a few moments, notice how your body feels in this no place. Okay, and again, it's nothing that I'm going to ask you to describe, so I want you to shake it off, get rid of it. And I want you to come back to that yes place. So just take a few moments again, just to recall that wonderful memory where you felt on top of the world. And most of this is really to notice the difference in your body. Okay, so just take a little bit of time to be in that yes place where you feel on top of the world. Things are really great. and you're excited, happy about life. So with this exercise, I know my one hand isn't quite fitting in. There we go. If I lean over. With this exercise, we all know what our yeses are, and we all know what our nos are. So they're extreme. Okay, they're at the end of my arms. Usually I spread my arms out like this when I'm demonstrating it, but I don't have the screen space. The other part of this, what happens is the maybe place, which is the in-between place. So we definitely know our yeses. We definitely know what our no is. Like those extremes, we're pretty certain of. And I used to say that when I was in that place, it was a relief because there was this sense of knowing. And we started that way when we were born. Our yeses were a warm belly and warmth and comfort. Our nos were perhaps a wet diaper, perhaps a bellyache, and those were our nos. So very clear in our life. Though as life carried on and as we learned and grew and gathered more data about our culture, the maybe places increased. And the maybe is, and I think all of us have experienced it, is that yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Do I, don't I, do I, don't I? And so many of us have experienced that. And I see Nathan is smiling and he's nodding. And you can interrupt me anytime, by the way. And I know we've got some participants, so if you've got questions about that. So what happens though yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask Elke, actually, if you have your chat window open.
Yep.
You're right, we do have some viewers. So if they, yeah, I just want to make sure that you can see any of the comments that come up and we can address them if need be.
Okay, and spent a long time. Oh, right. Okay. You mean in the yes, no place?
I think maybe on the latter, actually. Yeah. So I actually wondered if there was some strategies involved to kind of shift that later in today's session. So.
Absolutely. And you know what? We'll talk about it right now. So thank you. Absolutely. And thanks for opening that window. Sometimes I get distracted. So Nathan, I rely on you to kind of go, hey. So yeah, so the reason I have you do this exercise, and it is a great exercise, because what happens is we get involved in life, I'm going to lean again that way, and we get very cognitive, which means we get very much in our heads, and then we're not paying attention to our bodies. And we start moving forward and doing things in life, and it doesn't feel good anymore. However, we've lost that yes, no place and that awareness. So this exercise, it's actually in the book as well. It's called the yes, no, maybe exercise. And the reason that we're doing it is the best thing, or the practice, is that we get to know the yeses, and we also get to know our no's. So we had the scale 0 to 10. We also want to know when our body energy shifts. And the more aware that you are of this exercise, and this is natural and this is human nature, we naturally want to go to the yes place. And that is the strategy. And the more that you're aware, I got to lean again this way, the more that you are aware of the yes and the no, that maybe place becomes smaller and smaller. And I've been practicing this exercise for years. I can't tell you how many years. Now that maybe place for me is very tiny. And when my energy drops, I know that that is something I don't want to go closer towards. whether it's a business, whether it's a certain food, and or whether it's a simple invitation for tea. Our bodies are our barometers. So the more that we're aware of that, the better. And at the beginning, it's going to feel a little, well, I'm just speaking from my experience. It's going to feel a little strange because we've been so in our heads. And I don't know about viewers, if you ever made the pro and con list, the cons or the pros for doing certain things, that's very cognitive. When our bodies know, our bodies will tell us the truth right away. So the more that you practice this, the stronger your body is going to be, the stronger that feeling of the yes versus the no. You're going to really feel that in your body. And you can play with this. Some fun things, play with it with little things. So play with it with getting dressed in the morning. It can be that simple. What comes to mind first? Go with that. That's usually what your body wants. And you can have some fun with that. Sometimes you may notice that people either dress the same, or who knows what will come up with following that choice. The other choices could be some simple things as going a certain direction to do your errands. That one is a real fun one to play with. You can organize your time. And I live a little bit outside of town, and as I suspect a lot of the viewers, you do too. And we kind of plan a little route on how we do our errands. Well, as you drive out the driveway, listen to your body. Listen what direction your body wants to go. And it really can be a lot of fun. I will do that, and something will say, do this, go there, and I remember one errand, and it was so powerful. Well, it was one trip, it was a few errands, and 3 times I met somebody I hadn't seen for a long time, yet they were on my mind. So there they were. And Nathan, you're nodding your head. There was another time I had wanted to get a hold of somebody, and lo and behold, there she was standing in line at the store. So we were able to connect person to person. It's fun. You can have some fun with it. And so these are, when we practice, and my teacher said this too, practice with things that are not life-changing, because then you start getting some confidence in your body. And it could be as simple as, and I've done this before when this was a couple of years ago, and I don't know, Nathan, if you remember too, because you've been driving for a while, is, I would have that little voice that said, gas up tonight. And when I listened the next day, that gas may have gone up 10 cents a liter. Do you remember? We've had times like that, right?
It's never directly affected me. I've always driven kind of small cars that it's not a big difference, but I know people that are super conscious of it. For me, I think when you were talking about it, it's just times where I've ended up going or doing something that, why do I feel like doing this? Never really understanding, but the explanation comes later, like in an instance where you run into somebody that you haven't seen in a really long time and wouldn't have other means to get a hold of, right? So yeah, it's kind of neat. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, because, well, it's based on that we're all connected. So we all have vibration, we all have thought, and that we are connected. And when we listen to that subtlety in our body, because we are, well, you can correct me on this, I think, is it 85%, 75% water and vibration. So we're very much connected. And so when we listen to that part of ourselves, and the more that, like I said, the more that you practice, the stronger you're going to hear those impulses. They'll be stronger. And the other interesting thing is, remember when I was showing you this idea of the yes no is, as it becomes a little more subtle, as you practice, you're going to hear those subtle messages, and you'll hear a softer yes and perhaps the softer no, where it used to be caught up in that yes, no, maybe kind of swirl. And so the strategy is really practicing that self-awareness. And naturally, our bodies want to go to the yes. And so food, direction, driving directions, maybe grocery choices, just start trusting that. And as you build that confidence, it will be, your body will serve you even with the larger decisions. And I've done that where maybe logically didn't always make sense, or, I was questioning something. And sometimes we want to dip our toe in and try it. However, experience has said that, well, if I was questioning it, that probably was a pause, meaning to pause. It doesn't always mean a no or a yes. It sometimes just means to pause and to wait. And that's okay. Yeah, sometimes we make a decision and it isn't always a good one. So we've got to fix it. And when we look back, our bodies were lined up. They already told us that, so that wasn't working. So that's that yes, no, maybe exercise. And it is actually in page 137 in the first book, Anxiety Worry 1. So it's part of that series. Okay. One of the things is that I was saying about that, how personal, I'm checking my cheat sheets, how personal the boundaries are. And one of the things is that we really need to be clear. And I'm going to go through this a little bit more, but I want to just emphasize something, is clarity and being very specific. If I say to somebody, I want you to be nicer, the brain really doesn't know what that means. I want you to behave. The brain does not know what that means. You can try and define nice, and I'm sure that all of you will have a different definition. And another one is let's meet later. Again, the brain doesn't know what later is. And what happens is the brain starts going, well, is later 2 minutes, is later after this, is later tomorrow, is later next week, and then it just gets tired and stops. So one of the things that we'll talk about, and I want you to think about, is to be specific. So coming back to the nice is, maybe you might want to say, when we say hello, can you just ask me how I am, and use a softer tone. Right away, the body knows what that is. We may or not want to do that. However, we know what the request is. So really being clear, behaving. Maybe it's about saying, right now, I don't want you to use loud voices. I have a bit of a headache. So it's really being clear, and then the body understands and the brain understands what that request is. And that's a boundary. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Okay. So I'll just keep going then. It's good. All right. So trust your emotions. And this is also about trusting your body. Anger, rage, hurt, disappointment, frustration, confusion, restlessness, withdrawal, guilt, exhaustion. They're all clues that maybe you need to set a boundary. And here's an interesting one. If you find yourself complaining, and I'm guilty of that too, I try not to. However, when I notice that, I know it's about a boundary. And yeah, So I recently had that experience with a family member, and I noticed, I was complaining to friends, and then I realized, okay, there's a boundary. I need to think about my boundaries, and I really need to deal with that person on my boundaries, not complain. And we can get caught up in complaining. We can get caught up in doing that. However, treat it as a clue that it is time for us to look at a boundary. Again, practicing self-awareness, which we were talking about in that the scale 0 to 10, and also the yes, no, maybe exercise. The more that you know yourself, the more that you are aware of yourself, you can honor yourself by setting boundaries. And just know at the beginning, and we're going to talk about this too, is it may seem a little awkward, because if you're not used to it, then it'll feel strange. And it really depends on your upbringing and your past. If you had a mother or a grandmother, perhaps they were ultimate nurturers, and that's maybe what they did. They were house managers, housewives. I mean, they worked. However, that's what they did full time. Maybe nowadays you might think you need to do the same thing, and yet you could be a father or a mother and working. So, what was in your past? Was a parent a martyr? Some parents did a lot, and then they may or may not have complained, but maybe they did too much, and they were selfless. And I think we've in our culture sometimes think that's a good thing, when a parent has done that, or a grandmother has done everything for everyone but not for herself. And that's not always a good thing. It's not always a healthy thing. And it really depends. I mean, if that's their joy and their ultimate joy, absolutely. However, if it's wearing them down or making them sick, then we've got to look at that. But if we've had that in our lives, and then we think that's how we need to be as well. So we need to just be careful of, what was it in our past? How were we brought up? And, how does that work for us? And that can translate into a work environment. And sometimes, our coworkers may be sick, or maybe the job load increases, and then it keeps increasing, and it keeps increasing, and we have gone way beyond our job description, and then we need to pull back. I work with a lot of people that are burnt out, and they're stressed, and then we step back and see why, and it's gradual. It happens over time. The more that you take care of yourself, the more that you stand up for yourself, the easier it does become. And, at the beginning, like I said, you might feel guilty, you might feel some self-doubt, you might have a lack of confidence. And sometimes that's based from a culture or societal belief. And, maybe in your family, it was understood that certain people did certain things or certain tasks. And we need to kind of step back and say, well, is this right for me at this moment? Because our situation is different, right? Whether we're a parent or a single parent, or maybe a caregiver, we've got to look at that. If you're not certain, sometimes it's good to talk to some support about that. And then practice the language. Practice language that works for you, and practice language that you think the other person can hear. And we did talk a little bit, well, we mentioned a little bit about nonviolent communication, though that again is on pages 41 to 48, and that's in depth. Nathan, you've got a question or no?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, I guess maybe you could clarify a little bit more what you mean in terms of the language, and practicing that and what that might mean.
Okay. Yeah. So again, is be really specific. And I do have some examples, and maybe Nathan, if you've got an idea or even a situation that I could give an example for, I'm happy to do that. Or if people want to type in on the chat and ask, certainly type away for sure. So here are some examples, and again, we don't need to be angry. So maybe the first thing we want to do is really identify what that boundary is and what we need to do and how we need to express ourselves. And that already helps us as well, and it helps calm our system. So a simple one is, let's say you're getting tired of picking up somebody's clothes and maybe your job is doing the laundry. So it can be very simple. I mean, if you have a house full of teenagers, and the boundary could be, if you don't bring your clothes to the laundry room, they won't get washed. So that's the boundary. It's very clear. It's not angry. I have moms saying, oh, I'm always picking up clothes. I'm always gathering everything, and I'm the one folding it, and they're upset with it. And it isn't that it's just that one task. There's lots of tasks. However, that particular one has come up, and so I'll just say, well, then stop doing it. And they'll go, what? What do you mean stop doing it? I say, just stop picking it up, and let your family know. Give them notice. And let them know, and just say, you know what, I'm happy to do the laundry. However, I need you to participate. I need you to bring the clothes to the laundry room, if that's what the boundary is. And if you don't, it won't get washed. And it's very simple. And family members do catch on pretty quick. Another one is a messy room. And I don't know why, but I thought of it because it comes up a lot in therapy, with family therapy, is parents are quite upset when a child has a messy room. And one of the things you may want to think about is that we all do need our own space. So if we could have our own room, that's a good thing. I mean, sometimes we have to share a room, so then we have to consider that. But if we have our own room and our own space, and the child is older, perhaps, I mean, you have to think about the maturity level of the child, perhaps 8 years old or 9 years old or 10 years old, is let them have their space. And if they don't want to clean that space, then just close the door. And I know some parents are horrified with that. We draw the line with health and safety. So the health and safety is, mold can't be growing in the room because that's not healthy. So we want to make sure we're safe. So we still may have to inspect the room for sure. However, if the child, is living in an unorganized space, and the rest of the house is organized, maybe they need to live in that space for a while. And it's really interesting what happens is that a lot of times the children will start cleaning up on their own, or sometimes they hear stories, their friends come and they clean up the room before they go play in it. There's lots of things that humans do, and maybe their space is a creative space. We don't know that. However, it's really important we have our own space. So, think about the boundaries for yourself, and really think about, the household members and what you want to accomplish. Another one is, if you're co-sharing a room, is if you don't pay your rent, you're moving out at the end of the month. Or you give a date, maybe it's 2 months, and you just say that's it. And with these boundaries, you need to be firm and follow through. That's the other real thing with boundaries, especially when we begin to set a boundary, is we want to be very clear. And if the person doesn't understand, that's okay. Just say, I'll explain it again. And, because they're not used to you setting that boundary either. And so it's okay to have the conversation. And that's always a good thing. And you can express yourself that way. Another one is do your chores first, and then I'll give you a ride into town. And again, I guess that was thinking more about teenagers. Or maybe let's get these things done and then let's go for that walk, or let's do that. That can be a simple boundary. Let's do the dishes and then let's both of us sit down and watch a movie. They don't always have to be big boundaries or something so serious. And sometimes maybe, like, a friend, if they want to sit down after a busy afternoon and you're cooking, and if it doesn't feel good, maybe you got to sit down with them and just have that cup of tea and take that breath and enjoy that, 5-10 minutes of just kind of going, okay, let's just breathe here instead of going into the next task. And that's some self-care. And that may be a boundary for yourself. Instead of, and I'm speaking from experience because I can keep motoring and that's not very fun for other people, right? So we've got to think about those things. Another one could be if guests are visiting and they're not bringing food, is we can just say, it'd be great to see you. However, we're going to do potluck. Can you make a meal? And that's a boundary, and it's a request. And the other thing, if somebody doesn't do that over and over again, is just say no. Set a boundary and say, I'm busy. I can't do that right now. I can't have you visit right now. Or be clear, I can't afford it. So is that helping, Nathan? Are those?
Yeah, I think you've left a lot of examples of ways that you can implement. I guess the proper words and language to kind of set your boundaries, communicate, and hopefully you stay persistent, because I guess it's not always successful, and sometimes we're hard on ourselves in that instance, right?
Yes, and you're so right, Nathan. When we're practicing and when we're not used to doing it, and the other person isn't used to hearing it, and you're correct, we do need to repeat ourselves. And it doesn't mean that we're kind of that autopilot repeating. Sometimes we have to explain it, or we have to flush it out a little bit more, so the other person understands what we're requesting or what we're asking for. So that's a really good point too, that we do need to repeat ourselves sometimes. And it's really, really important to be firm, that we stand by those boundaries, because we're just, and this isn't, people aren't mean. It's not like that. We're just human. And if somebody isn't clear with their boundaries, we might not be listening to it. And if somebody, whether it's a child or a partner, so that's a good point. And it's really about our own self-care. And one of the things that a long time ago, one of my friends, I was in my 20s, and she was pretty abrupt actually with me. I laugh about it now because we're still friends after all this time. And one evening I was over there for supper, and she told me that I was really boring. And it really set me back. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, you're tired all the time and you're really not that interesting. And at the moment, she meant at the moment, she didn't mean my character. And it was true. I was working very hard. I had a sign painting business and worked like incredible hours. And she actually used the word selfish, and I had a reaction with that. And the reason I'm bringing that up, because a lot of times some of these strategies, we may have the idea that it's selfish, and it's not. It's remember, she said, you need to be selfish. And I said, oh, I can't be selfish. And because that word was such a negative word for me growing up. And then she said, well, you need to take care of yourself better. And she said, if you're not at 100%, so how can you possibly give 100%? And that really struck me as, because I thought about that and I thought, she's right. I am working at 40%. I was so tired. And I thought about that. And I think since that time, I really improved my self-care and still am learning different ways of self-care. And so when we're at 90% or 100% or 85%, whatever that percentage is, that's what we can give. We can then give 85% or 90%. And most of us as humans, and I know most of the viewers are we're service workers. We do things for other people. And I know, even you, Nathan, you're a service worker. You provide services in so many aspects of your life. And as do I. And just the fact of, being either a son, a brother, a sister, we're all givers in some way. Parents, yes, we do give. And so, thinking about this self-care is really a way to to give a better quality of who we are. And so, yeah, it's self-love, yes. It's also heightens the level of service that we can give, right? So maybe that will help help viewers, help you decide about, how do I take care of myself, not going past a boundary, not going past exhaustion, being able to say no so that you can say yes next week or the next time, and do it with joy and love. There's a couple other things I wanted to share, but I just wanted to pause for a moment. Any other questions that are coming up, Nathan?
No, I think that's great. If you have more points to address, I think we're at about 5:23 now, so take the time you like to.
Yeah. So I'm aware of that. So
okay, good.
There's a couple points that I want to wrap up with is seek support when this is new for you. Practice. So practice with a support group, perhaps a friend, a partner, a coach, a counselor, till you can practice. So sometimes doing a little bit of theater and practicing your language and your tone, that helps. Take small steps. This is a skill. And if it's a skill that you didn't learn as a child, then it will take some time to feel comfortable with it and to understand the language and the requests and how to be firm. And believe me, when someone crosses your boundary, you're going to feel it in your body. You'll feel it right away when you've set a boundary and they went past. So it takes a lot of courage, practice, and support. And I just want to mention a couple points, and they are in the book, is being assertive means to stand up for your rights and not allowing people to take those rights away from you or others. So it's not reasonable, really, to expect people to guess your limits and your boundaries. So it's not reasonable to think that someone would know your limits and boundaries. I hear people saying, oh, they should have known, they shouldn't do that to me. It's not reasonable. We're the only ones that know what our limits are. We're the only ones that can set the boundary for ourselves. So just kind of keep that in mind. And the other thing is, don't expect people to understand or comply. They may just say no, or they might not do it. And then you've got to make a decision. And that's another choice that you can make. But it's not worth going past your boundaries, which you already came to that conclusion. No one can demand to know your mind or to know what you're thinking or feeling. No one has the right to tell you what to think. They don't have the right to tell you what you're capable of either. That's up to you. It's what is right for you. No one has the right to tell you how you should feel or what your values or beliefs are. They're yours. You know your beliefs, your integrity the best, and that's what will guide you with setting boundaries for yourself. You have a right to be who you are and live without harm, regardless whether people like it or not. And that's something that I said at the beginning is we don't need to be nice about setting a boundary. You just need to be firm and clear. You may feel guilty at the beginning. People may not like the way that you're changing the game. However, that's their choice. And I think in the last session, we talked about that, about nature's business, my business, and their business, Byron Katie's model. So that's something that you may want to review when you're considering boundaries. And you have the right to ask for what you need, and you have the right to ask for help. So again, setting boundaries takes courage, takes practice. It's a skill, and it's something we can learn and it's something we can master. So thank you, everybody.
All right, thanks for joining. I guess on the topic of reviewing some of the information, I want to note that I'll leave a link to the playlist for all the videos in the description for this video as well. Okay, so thanks for joining us. Bye for now, everyone.
Can't make my heart. There we go.